People still have a lot of questions about Avengers Endgame, and the Russo brothers are doing an amazing job of explaining things since the movie released. In this video, we're talking about their most recent comments about the ending of Avengers Endgame for Sam Wilson, Tony Stark, and Black Widow.
It's like the news, but for nerds. Subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Today's shout out goes to Red Panda Represent. Indeed, the year after Avengers Endgame is 2023 in the MCU. We will do another nerd card question at the end of this video. What is up, everybody? Happy Friday to you. I'm, of course, Josh. This is the Den of Nerds, and man, we got more sweet news to talk about with regards to Avengers Endgame and what the Russo brothers are clarifying about the film. However, before we get into all of that, I do want to take just a moment to recognize the passing of Peter Mayhew yesterday. Peter Mayhew, of course, played Chewbacca in many of the Star Wars films, the far majority of the Star Wars films, and he passed. He was a kind, gentle soul. A sad day for nerds yesterday, but Peter honestly lived a great life and touched the lives of a lot of different people, so we should celebrate his life rather than mourn him, but I know that's difficult, but I just wanted to say, let's take just one moment of silence here for Peter. Thank you, Peter. All right, so let's get into the news, guys. We've been talking a lot this week about different things from Avengers Endgame, and I do want to say, of course, spoiler warning. If you haven't seen Endgame, get out of here. What are you doing? Go see Endgame, because it's only going to get crazier from here as far as spoilers. But yeah, basically, there's been a lot of questions from this film. A lot of people are talking about different aspects of it, and the Russo brothers are being interviewed a lot, since it came out, and they are giving great explanations for different things in the film. To me, this all makes sense. This is the biggest film of all time, like literally might be the biggest movie of all time. I think it will actually beat Avatar if the projections for the second weekend are true. And so it only makes sense that we're spending some time breaking all these different aspects of this film down. I hope you guys don't mind. So let's go over this article that is on usatoday.com, in which they really asked some great questions of the Russo brothers and got some amazing responses. You can go check out the full article if you want, but we're going to break down most of the ideas here. So the first thing USA Today asks the Russo brothers is about Sam Wilson as Captain America. It's a really good question. Check out what they said. Why was Sam Wilson the best choice to be the next Captain America? So far as matching the level of integrity of Captain America, Sam is pound for pound as morally forthright as anyone in the Marvel Universe, and Bucky's a damaged character, says Joe Russo. His brother Anthony adds that they did debate about the choice, and that the bond between Steve and Sam that was formed in Winter Soldier sealed a certain trust. Sam spends his time trying to repair other people who are broken by war, and it just feels like he has the same values as Captain America. They were then asked about Steve Rogers, whether or not this will be the last time we see Rogers, and they simply said, we really cannot answer that. But I just wanted to mention that because we'll get into it towards the end of the video, but it sort of has to do with Falcon and Bucky. The next big question was whether or not Iron Man actually had to die in this film. Now, this is actually one of the questions the Russo brothers get asked maybe the most, and they've actually addressed this in several different interviews and to several different people. One of the things they said was really interesting is when they pitched this to Robert, they had the idea, they thought it was great. As a storytellers, it's ultimately their decision, but Robert Downey Jr. has contributed so much to the MCU, and he's such an integral part of the Marvel family that they did pitch it to him. What's interesting is apparently Downey was not super down with it at first, but eventually made peace with it. I mean, he starts as this cocky guy. He ends up, kind of realizing the error of his ways, wants to become a hero. And mostly in the 22 movies of the MCU, his arc is really what has been explored the most. And initially in Avengers Endgame, he's unwilling to help everybody out and do the time travel thing because he's made peace with where he is at, and he wants to protect what he has, including his wife and his new daughter. And the Russo brothers say then in the film, he ultimately decides to make the greatest sacrifice possible, leaving them behind. When you go back and look at that character in the first Iron Man and where he ends up, it's one of the greatest arcs in movie history. And I agree with that. Even though they didn't spend a lot of time on this question in this particular interview, there's a lot of context out there, and this is a big deal. And I think ultimately, the reason they decided to do this is the reason that it is the greatest arc probably in the history of cinema. It's crazy. It all makes sense. It started with Iron Man. It ends with Iron Man. It had to happen to pave the way for new people. But as I often say, guys, there's no body scene at the end. And I think Tony Stark, like most good comic book things, is just sitting on a shelf somewhere to be brought back into a later future story. But the focus of the MCU will not be on him moving forward, like at all, which is actually good. They were next asked about Natasha Romanoff. Was it really that important for Black Widow to die? And here's what they said. In the article, it says, during the time heist, Widow and Hawkeye travel to the planet Vormir to get the Soul Stone, but find out that it requires one of them to die. They both have done things they're not proud of, and they're ready to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. In fact, they fight it out in a battle of wills, but Widow wins so that her friend can see his family again. There was a lot of back and forth between the filmmakers about how to figure out which one of them would sacrifice themselves. Hawkeye, for one, feels like he's not worthy of his family any longer, Anthony Russo says. But the fact of the matter is, he has the option of seeing them again. Widow, though, is willing to make the greatest sacrifice for the superhero community. That's really poignant and why we felt it was a better story to tell with her. And again, they've talked about that in other interviews too. It's just such an important moment for Natasha. She basically has a really kind of crappy, dark life, and then she gets the Avengers as a family. She's working this whole 5 years to try to do something, to try to help, to try to save them. Her sacrifice is made willingly. It is important. It matters. I think it's good for the character. So now let me get into a little bit more of my opinion about these sort of things. Let's start with Sam Wilson as Captain America. Now, as a comic book reader, I would have told you that I would have preferred Bucky to be the one to pick up the mantle. And that's totally still true. I would have preferred it to be Bucky, but I'm not mad that it's Sam Wilson. And the fact that Sam Wilson in the Marvel Cinematic Universe was this guy just helping vets deal with combat, trying to help people truly. And when you watch Winter Soldier again and you realize that that's the Russo brothers' first film in the MCU, and that bond that is created of those two men as brothers, as Cap is literally searching for his long lost brother who happens to be a very broken man, I think it just generally makes sense. And I think despite Bucky and Sam having a lot of differences, ultimately Bucky will realize this. He will realize that Sam was the guy that helped Cap, helped Steve find Buck, helped him reunite with his best friend and really save him as a man. I mean, Sam's got amazing character, and I think that that's really Captain America's superpower. So a lot of people say, well, he doesn't have the super soldier serum, this, that, and the other thing. That's just a tool in the arsenal. Really, Captain America's greatest weapon was his morality, his ethos, and his will. And I do think that Sam embodies all of those qualities. Also, briefly, I absolutely love that the Russo brothers, upon being asked if we've seen the last of Steve Rogers, said that we can't answer that. By the way, we totally have not seen the last of Steve Rogers, and the way they answered that is sort of a tell. If they would have said, well, we think that he's done forever, but you never know what Marvel will do, that would mean that they honestly had no idea, but you know, it's up in the air. The fact that they said we can't answer that, man, there's a lot of telling in that non-answer. It really feels like they totally know that Cap's gonna pop back up again, that they set it up for Cap to pop back up again, which is something I personally really believe in, dude. We're seeing young Cap again. Now let's talk about Iron Man dying. Now, I've already kind of given my thoughts on this in several other videos, but I do think it completely works. It did shock me. As I said, like right up until Endgame, I was like, look, I'm still thinking that Cap is 99%, and Tony's 90%. I thought both of them were gonna go. So it's actually a little more shocking to me that Cap didn't die. But yeah, Tony dying completely makes sense. It's a great scene, it's emotional. It will hang over the future of the MCU heavily. It will influence what happens from here on out, not only on Earth, but in space, for other planets. Tony Stark's legacy and the legacy of the Infinity Saga just can't be understated, and I think that it's just a beautiful thing that they did, and it will hang over Spider-Man in the next film. It's gonna hang over everything as we move forward. Let's talk about Black Widow's death for a second here. I know there are a lot of people that feel like she was given the short end of the stick. I do not believe that at all, and I find that really weird, to be frank, but Scarlett Johansson literally gave the best performance she's ever given in any Marvel film. Her character was pivotal to keeping the flame of hope alive. She literally sacrifices herself to give them a chance to bring back billions of lives. And this is a character that was a shady spy that did horrible things, had really no moral compass, and her family, her relationship with Cap, her relationship with Tony, her relationship with all the other Avengers, that created the good in her that allowed her to make the sacrifice to bring all of these people back. It's beautiful, it's poetry, I absolutely love it, and I find it crazy that people are complaining about that. Now, there's also stuff in this article about Thor, and there's some stuff online about them talking about Hulk as well, but I'm actually gonna do those in separate videos, so I just wanted to hit 3 main points here and talk about Sam Wilson as Captain America, Black Widow's death, and Tony Stark's death, what the Russo brothers said about it in this video. So let me know what you thought about all of that in the comment section below. Now let's check the nerd card before we get out of here. I wanna know, what year did Steve Rogers and Tony Stark go to when they had to improvise their time travel plan? What year did they go to get more PIM particles? Answer that question in the comment section below. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.